All right, thank you, Shannon, and welcome to everyone that's joining us today. As Shannon mentioned, my name is Michael Clark. I'm president of the Conference of Consulting Actuaries this year. I'm a managing director with a firm called River and Mercantile and based out of Denver, Colorado. My guest today is Rob Bacher, and given Rob's background in the non-traditional roles he's had as a consultant and working on the client side especially, we're excited to have the opportunity to have him with us today. So Rob, welcome.
Thank you, Michael.
Rob, just to start out, if you could maybe give everyone a brief introduction about your professional bio and history, I think that would be helpful to get us started.
Sure, no, I would like to do that. And I want to thank everyone at the CCA who's pulled this together as well. That's a great thing that you're doing. So it's a little interesting. I kind of actually fell into the actuarial profession. It wasn't I wasn't even aware of it, honestly. In high school, I did well in math and sciences. Was going into the university, going to go into business school, go down a finance accounting path, and needed to go to school for 1 year to get in. So I went through the sciences, took the prerequisite courses, and had an open house there for the actuarial profession, and some speakers from Great West Life and Mercer, I believe, up in Winnipeg, Manitoba, came and talked about it, and it was kind of perfect. Actuary at that point was ranked #1 as the #1 job in the job almanac, and kind of just kept going down that path. So that's kind of where it started. Did a lot of things in consulting initially. That was kind of my desire to go down that path to be more forward facing. I had the view, at least, but I think that's probably wrong, that insurance were typically more inward looking type of actuaries. Did a lot of traditional work and then moved into the non-traditional space while on a consulting side. And then ultimately, about 10 years ago, I moved to the corporate side of things. So that's sort of where I've been.
Awesome. So Rob, you mentioned this too, or at least alluded to it. You have quite a few credentials after your name. I'll read through these really quick. You're an FCA, FSA, FCIA, EA, MAA, CFA, and have your Lean Six Sigma Green Belt. Can you talk to us for a few minutes about why you pursued these various credentials that you have and how they've helped you as an actuary?
Sure, Michael. You know, much of it really came out of my natural career progression. I was driven naturally to be curious about things and a desire to learn and try new things. So starting up in Canada, I pursued the actuarial designations that you would need, which really is through the Society of Actuaries, and ultimately got your FSA designation. And while writing certain exams, got your fellowship of the Canadian Institute of Actuaries. Again, certain things specific there that you needed to follow through. During my career there, I started doing a lot of things on the investment side, got into asset liability modeling and just general investment consulting. And our managing consultant or mentor of mine was pursuing the CFA designation, so he got me interested in doing that. So once I got my actuarial exams, my fellowships done, I kind of pursued that path a little bit. Made the decision with some changes that were going on in the office in Canada to request a move to the US. So I had met my now wife traveling to Toronto, and her family was on that side. So we ended up moving to Windsor, Ontario, and crossing the border into the Detroit metro area for a number of years. So as a result, I wrote my enrollment exams. So I needed to have that to come across really to be able to do everything you needed to do. And ultimately, as I progressed in my career, I got my member in the American Academy of Actuaries, and probably the most cherished one that I have is actually being a fellow of the Conference of Consulting Actuaries. I spent some time at Deloitte for a number of years as well, a great time there, and during that time, that's when I got my Six Sigma Green Belt. Again, it was one of those things that you kind of do as you want to continue to learn and grow and try different things. It was a great chance to have that opportunity.
Awesome. Rob, you mentioned this early on when you were introducing yourself. You've had some non-traditional roles as an actuary, especially even on the consulting side, but then moving to the client side. Can you tell us a little bit about the work that you've done on kind of both sides of that fence, on the consulting side and the client side, and what have you enjoyed, and how have your actuarial skills helped you in those different roles?
Sure. No, there's a lot of things, Michael, that I've done. Perhaps maybe not non-traditional anymore, at least from my perspective, but up in Canada, we started with doing some cool things on the pension side around immunization. I worked on a large negotiated cost multi-employer plan. It was in a challenging time, so we needed to work with regulators to try to come to an approach to be able to have the assets and liabilities move in tandem and kind of lock in that funded percentage. Got into investment consulting, asset liability modeling. I was, as computing power sort of picked up and things evolved there, I was happy to be part of that team and doing things there. Mergers and acquisitions became something that I kind of got a passion for as well, being able to use my actuarial skills and looking at things, identifying risks, trying to look for key risks early on that could perhaps make the deal stop, deal breakers. So that was something that I kind of got involved with a lot too, that I think actuaries are doing more and more now, but that's definitely a space that I find our skill set very well used. Even more broadly, I think for me, it's just being able to take what are often complex things that you learn and articulate that in a way to others to make them understand it. I think that's one of the things that is important in our profession to be able to do, and I get a lot of enjoyment out of that. So again, even though it's perhaps not traditional actuarial work, I think it's being able to take things and articulate it in a way, not just your clients, but even their employees and other stakeholders. What does it all mean? I did
on the M&A stuff that you mentioned. Is it all focused on kind of some of more of those traditional areas of looking at retirement plans and healthcare plans, or was it more broad than that?
It was more broad, actually. I think particularly when I got to Deloitte, where I spent a number of years, they got into the deal a lot earlier typically. So we got to look at a lot of different things there related to contracts and other terms beyond just the benefit plans and programs, which we definitely focused on as well. Pensions have always been a challenging area that companies want to understand the risks associated with that, but special deals and other different things related to transaction and putting a value on that and making adjustments to the financial statements, all of those things beyond just what you would traditionally perhaps do as a benefits consultant or want to focus on, definitely became part of that process as well.
So how did your, I'm curious if you could talk for a little bit about how your actuarial skill set helped you in dealing with things that were not necessarily actuarial in nature?
Sure, I think a lot of it, Michael, on the corporate side in particular, it's looking at some of the things that we needed to do as a company from a business standpoint that weren't necessarily actuarially related per se, but everything that I find in business has some sort of implication around cost or savings that you needed to evaluate and put some sort of profile or understanding of the risks associated with it. So that definitely lent itself well. Even the skills that I've acquired, being able to think on your feet and being able to kind of go through that process and listen and understand what someone is saying and then being able to articulate your point of view. I think the actuarial skills has helped me be able to become much more effective at that. I spent a number of years on the corporate side in executive compensation, and at that point there was a lot of challenges around ISS and Glass Lewis, looking at different things that companies were doing around CEO pay and different things like that. So my ability to use my actuarial skills to look at that and be able to put a different lens on things as we try to share our point of view with the market was important.
And how, especially when you're dealing in those maybe more non-traditional actuarial roles, how were you viewed or perceived by others coming into some of those projects that you were working on and the fact that you were a credentialed actuary?
It took time, honestly. You come into a new organization, you want to take your time, be diligent, feel your way through a little bit. But over time, you kind of build the relationships and trust. I think that's very critical in any place that you go to. Ultimately, I became, I think in my eyes, at least the guy you go to who would figure it out. So that's can be challenging at times because you get sometimes some less desirable things or things that are rather messy to deal with, but it was always something that I enjoyed, focusing on things that were rather challenging at times or that were important for the business, and they wanted someone to perhaps think about it in a different perspective. So it was good, and I think it was an enjoyable time for me, being able to help the business do things that they needed to.